Again on TVC Breakfast. So the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ola Olukoyede, has raised concerns about the alarming rise in global cybercrimes. And Mr. Olukoyede estimates that the global loss to cybercrimes could reach $10.5 trillion with a daily record of 2,328 cases. In Nigeria, the situation is equally dire, with $500 million lost to cybercrimes in 2022 alone. Notably, cybercrime suspects accounted for a significant portion of the 3,455 convictions secured by the anti-graft agency under Mr. Olukoyede's leadership. And he also reveals this startling. He went on, to give further details about this startling figures at the National Cybercrime Summit organized by the EFCC in collaboration with the European Union-funded Rule of Law and Anti-Corruption Program of International. It's popularly called IDEA. The summit aimed to bring together stakeholders to address the growing menace of cybercrime. Joining us now from our Abuja studio is the president of Global Network for Cyber Solution, Segun Olubule. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. And in terms of, measuring the impact with all the figures that the EFCC chairperson has reeled out now, how do you describe the impact of cybercrimes? Mr. Olukoyede even went on to justify why the agency appears to focus on combating this menace. Tell us your perspective.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me into the conversation again. I really appreciate the fact that TV Continental has been very consistent in bringing these issues to the main public. Let me also commend the EFCC because we have seen the visibility of what they are doing. We have seen the effort that they have deepened across the systems. And that we have also seen a paradigm shift. Before, what we used to hear is that you have EFCC officials always going to arrest, prosecute, and all that. But of recent, what we are beginning to see now, we are seeing a shift from the traditional approach. Now, we are asking questions, and they are asking questions. That what can we do to empower some of these guys that are involved in cyber criminality? But really, looking at the impact, I must confess that the impact of cyber criminality or activity of cybercrime is really damaging to this country. I was in Tanzania just about 2 weeks back, and I had the privilege of being involved in threat analysis and profiling of countries around African side. Nigeria has a very low profile. Why? Because there has been a persistent communication about cybercrime, and the activities of those boys has all been, damaging. So we find ourselves where even sometimes investors begin to ask questions, and we've seen even institutions asking questions, and we have seen a damaging impact even at the point of entry. So I think the impacts are there. And the damaging, cost. I'm very happy that EFCC brought this out, the financial impact of cybercrime activities. That's to show that EFCC is now implementing a data-driven analysis. Now, they are beginning to see the trend, threat and the pattern and the trends of activities going around all the cybercriminality and all that. So the impact has been damaging, really, but I think what we've seen happening now, we are seeing EFCC working with stakeholders. I'm particularly happy that the EFCC has taken this issue to the presidency. That is one of the biggest levels of awareness because it is good for the national leaders to start getting to realize that we have a huge challenge in the country. So if that challenge is not collaboratively addressed, it will affect all of us. Our international damage, it will affect international reputations, it will affect our businesses. So there is a problem that demands everyone to be on the table, and let's see how best that we can all resolve it.
All right, so with all you've said now, do you think that there should be a state of emergency on cybercrime?
I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear us, right? Okay, so do you think there should be a state of emergency on cybercrime with all you have just said?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. In my own opinion, I think it's high time for cybercrime issues to be escalated, prioritized. And it is not just a cybercrime, really. I usually like to see a challenge as an opportunity to provide a solutions. So I would like to speak more to the cybersecurity component of it. It is now the time for the country to decentralize this approach towards cybersecurity issues. We've all been saying that the federal government has been doing a lot more, but the state is not really doing much. And we've seen so much burden on the state and on the federal government side. So I think it is important that as the federal government is prioritizing issues on cyber criminality, the state has to be included in all this. After all, cybercrime is not within the exclusive list of Nigerian constitution issues. So I think it is now important for us to start looking at how do we decentralize approach towards cyber criminality? How do we bring real parties to the table? After all, most of this criminality happens at the domestic level. So I think it is important now for us to prioritize it. And I'm very happy that for EFCC to take this to the corridors of power, I think it's really pointing to the fact that we have a big issues in our hands. So it is time for the cyber criminality crime issues or counter whatever measures from the context of cyber security issues, if it can be prioritized. Now, it is also important to emphasize it that the cyber criminality affects all sectors. We're not looking at just financial sector; it affects education sector. We have seen the so-called leadership from the JAMB. We have seen issues of complaining about criminality going on in that space. So it affects all the sector. So I think it is important now for Nigeria to start looking at how do we look at these issues in a broader context. How do we bring sub-regional entities and stakeholders to the table? It is not just within the purview of the federal government of Nigeria. The state also has a role to play. The state also needs to enact law on cyber criminality, and the state also needs to allocate resources, and the state also needs to play and bring all these things into the table.
In tackling cybercrime now, there's been talks about collaboration with the international community, looking at the fact that this is not just a Nigerian problem. It's an international problem. It's taking international dimensions. So are we doing that effectively?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Are we collaborating with the international community effectively such that we can easily tackle cybercrime?
Yeah. To be fair with the federal government, especially Nigerian police, EFCC, and some of these strategic agencies of government, there has been existing collaboration. Active collaboration is actually going on. I think there have been a technical assistance from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. We have seen collaboration between Nigerian system and NIPOL. So I think that collaboration has always been there. International cooperation has always been there. But the issue now is how do we domesticate some of these international collaborations? How do we bring the state actor at the domestic level into play? How do we open up cyber security opportunity for the younger ones? How do we move some of those guys that have been arrested? How do we change and transform them to become, a formidable team that could also assist this country as well in countermeasures? But there have been a fantastic collaborations. For example, Nigeria now has a National Cybercrime Center established by Nigerian police. That couldn't have happened without the strategic support from the international police It couldn't have happened without the support from African Union. So there has been very effective collaboration in that regard. There has been. But the main issue is that how do we deepen countermeasures across the domestic space? That is where we are.
And that's even where I would also, be focusing on in this next line of questioning, because you spoke earlier on about involving the states. They have a role to play, breaking it down further beyond the international partnerships. Of course, you're mindful of the fact that many state governments have gone to the Supreme Court questioning the legality of the EFCC's operations in Nigeria. We don't know how it's going to pan. The judgment is due any moment from now, but don't you see all these wranglings, that could, be a clog in this partnership that you are talking about with the states?
Well, I don't see that coming to play, and I really do not want to get into the controversies of EFCC issues and all that. But my concern is that EFCC has always been the only organization that has been very active, though I'm aware that sometimes they work in collaboration with Office of National Security Advisor, and I also know that Nigerian Police has been doing some awareness across the space. But these are federal government agencies, and I kept asking a question. Cybercrime is an offense. Is it part of the federal list? Because there's something we call exclusive list. If it's not within the exclusive list, then it is important that the state should do something about our offense. There should be a response from the state, not to stop the state from creating its own policy issues. There should be clarity and focus. How can the state come in? Because we have always been seeing EFCC, arresting EFCC. Another issue that we have, we seem to focus more on the EFCC arresting, prosecuting, and all that. But the question is that what do we do in empowering the other side? I listened to the previous speaker. He said so much about AI adoption, how AI can be adapted into all these things. Now, the question is, if we don't have enabling policies at the state level, because at the state level you have resource, and I will keep on saying, Nigeria, we are not lacking in human resource. What we have is lacking is clarity and focus. Once we get our clarity, what we intend to achieve, I will focus on cyber criminality at the state level. What is our priorities? What is affecting us more? And in Nigeria here, we have issues of cybercrime. What is motivating it? I know that EFCC has been studying the pattern and the trends, which is fantastic. But there's a need to also have a data-driven analysis, risk assessment at the state level. So it is important now that the state begin to now play, its own role. For example, we have seen Lagos state government coming up to set up an advisory council. Please, let's go beyond the advisory council. Let there be a state legislations, and let there be a state regulations, let there be a state enforcement, let there be, participation of the state as well. And I can tell you that will open up a space and create jobs as well. So I think it is important, really, that we begin to look at it from what we really want out of it. Do we want to keep on arresting, or do we want to exploit all these challenges that we have, package it together, and provide opportunity? Let me give you an example. Data protection has created a fantastic opportunity. If you focus on data identity thefts, and we are always looking and going after those that are stealing data. But right now, you have Nigerian data protections, you have Nigerian data protection act, which has empowered the state. I'm talking about federal government as in Nigeria. It has empowered Nigeria now to implement data protection, kind of regulations. Then you have capacity building, you have enforcement going on, you have regulatory going on. Private sector is, responding. So if data protection can generate about 500,000, potential jobs, how much more cybersecurity? Cybersecurity can generate up to 5 million jobs if the space are open, if the state comes into play. So I think it is important to decentralize our approach to cyber criminality. How do we address it? Do we keep on going, allowing EFCC to be the sole octopus agency to be arresting, investigating, without even having a strategic cybercrime? Nigeria has a national cybersecurity strategy, yeah. And within that context, we have a little portion that addresses issues of cyber criminality issues. But we don't really have a comprehensive cybercrime strategies. All these things need to be deepened down to the state, because the issues and the crime, the offenses, happen within the domestic space. So this is important. It is very important for us to look at it from that perspective.
Okay, so we stay in a country where if the House wants to address a particular issue, promulgate laws, and before you know it, there are questions about its implementation. Now, if we have to bring up a cybercrimes strategy or cybercrimes act for the House to look into and it's passed into law, are you optimistic that it will be implemented to the latter?
Okay. If I may get you correctly, you are talking about implementation challenge.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. Like I keep on saying that Nigeria, we are not lacking in effective strategy. We are not lacking in how to develop strategies. We've had strategy that beat records everywhere in the world. We've had policy that are beating records anywhere in the world. But what we are lacking is the political way to implement our strategy. Let me start from the National Cybersecurity Program now. If you look at it, there has been a comprehensive framework from the institutional arrangement, capacity arrangement, and from the even regulatory arrangement. All of those things are there. But the political way to implement some of these measures is what is lacking. That is why I'm saying is that let us start looking at this approach. Is it working? If that approach is not working, then I think we need to start doing what? Decentralize our approach. Let's look at what can we do differently. That's why I'm saying that. Let's look at the issue of cybersecurity. If it's not on the exclusive list, then let us decentralize it. Allow the state. State should start coming. For example, Lagos State, Rivers State, and some of those high-end states, not to stop them to create their own internal measures. But implementation cannot happen without a proper legislative framework and a legal framework. Once the legal framework is there, and there's harmonization between the state and the federal government, then I think the implementation will be driven by default. Let me give an example again. Data protection is still a fantastic example here. The moment we had the regulations, in fact, the regulation came by a kind of subsidiary, a byproduct of an existing law. A regulation was created, and it was working. There were responses. Then later, law came in. Now, the law is in auto mode. Everybody has to respond to the law. Enforcement is going on. The private sector is going on. And then, the law is not only responding to the Nigerian context. The law is responding to international requirements. So it becomes a default. So I think it is important for us to resituate our cybersecurity strategy and even the countermeasure on cybercrime. Once we can, if we can get our legal framework appropriately and there is an enforcement, there is a regulation, I think the motivation to implement will be by default. Nobody will force us to implement because the law will be there. So I think that is, I believe, that is what we need to do right now. We need to reassess what is not working.
Right,
yeah.
Right. The issue of, preventing cyber crimes, looking at the humongous impact it has on the economy and other indicators, the criminal, making it an issue of, preventing cyber crimes also focused, was a main focus at this just concluded summit. How to optimize cyber skills of our youth, of our teeming youth, for national development and not for crimes. What would be your recommendation? How do we demystify this subject?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I want to give a note of, let me just a warning to some of our federal government agencies. They shouldn't go ahead and seeking to implement skill issues. So how should we address, how should we empower our youth? How should we do this and all that? Yeah, they can create enabling environment. they can motivate actions from the stakeholders. But allow the stakeholders, the private sector, the NGOs, the academia, these are the experts. Allow them to do their things. If you create an enabling environment, EFCC should partner with existing stakeholders, be it civil society working in that regard or a private sector entity working in that regard. There should be a synergy. That implementation of that, I quite agree that there's a need for us to create a skill empowerment. And then let me also sound a note of warning. We can't just, migrate criminals into cybersecurity environment. Let me tell you this. There's a thin line between being a hacker and ethical hacker. If you have a sufficient fund, or if you are sufficiently motivated, you can cross from being an ethical to unethical. So if the so-called criminals that have been arrested and prosecuted, if they are not passing through certain level of transformations, be it psychological transformations, emotional transformation, and reorientation about what they do, who can do that? The private sector, the civil society. So I think it is right time for EFCC to open the door. And let there be a framework of partnership, a framework where partners can decide, okay, in skill area, I can do this. In the psychology area, where to build a transformation process for our youth, I can do it. Then the private sector, where that can create an employment opportunity for our youth after being trained, allow them to do their own thing. Then, so the academy as well, allow the academy to come in to also deepen the skill, training, and research and all that. Not until when we do that and bring these players into the system. EFCC will keep on running a race that is not cut out for it. The focus of EFCC is to prosecute, is to arrest, is to go after our cyber criminals. But when it comes to now, transforming the criminals into a strategic use for the state, I think it is important now to start looking at shifting from cyber criminality to cyber security. And in doing that, there has to be a deliberate effort to create a partnership and provide incentives for those players. Let them do it. Nigeria is not lacking in capacity. I keep on saying it. Nigeria is not lacking in skills. We may lack in some level of skills, really, and that can be addressed. But if the agencies of government wanted to do all this, then you find that they keep on moving in the same circles. But meanwhile, let me just deepen this also. There's a need also to provide a literacy transformation. You see, cybercrime literacy is essentially lacking in our school. So it is important for us to deepen it at the primary school level. Let there be a literacy on cybersecurity, a literacy on the digital literacy, a literacy even on cyber criminality and all that. Let there be a cybercrime and this awareness that is embedded as part of our educational system. So by that, you begin to catch them and transform the mindset of our youth right from when they are in school. But however, I will still canvass that EFCC and government agencies should allow partners from the space. Let them do their thing. Provide incentives. Create opportunity for synergy. Do not make things easy and so difficult for yourself. Don't run what you are not cut out for. They are professional in that regard. So if you allow them to do it and you provide an enabling environment, intervention funds, and you motivate and monitor, and you set the basic criteria, I think we will achieve a better result. But going that way of EFCC in wanting to implement that, I think we will still come back to the drawing table and start asking questions once again.
All right, Mr. Segun Olugbile, President of Global Network for Cyber Solution, we thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you for having me.
Finally,
thank you.